Hello, everyone. Glad to have you here with us, with the whole team. I can still not believe we made it happen as the situation gets a bit worse. So, these next 30 minutes, we're going to dive into some of the most interesting trends we've seen with the team this year, based on the 4,000 applications we received for this year competition. So, at Hello Tomorrow, we like to see that our upcoming challenges, be they environmental or industrial, should be, and actually are, some of the biggest opportunities of this next decade. So for the first part of the trends, I'll be taking you on a journey to see how we can address planetary health, and then Saurabh will dive you into what's happening next in the healthcare space. One of the key issues we're facing, clearly, is this temperature rising. Everyone is aware about that figure now. We're already at 1.5 degrees Celsius, but what it means is already things that we cannot repair: acidic oceans, glaciers that are disappearing, and even if we were to stop now, the greenhouse gas emissions will still have them for the next decade around us. So there's a need to go faster, because if we don't meet the target, actually it's developing countries that are going to be hit the hardest with complex crises that will go on top of each other. So we do believe that deep tech can address one massive challenge, that is this global warming. And actually energy is accountable for 70% of those emissions, both in the production and exploitation. So one big question is, how does deep tech help us get faster on this topic? The first opportunity space, cleaner energy, showed us this year that there's clearly deep tech ramping up to accelerate clean H2 production capacity. One really cool startup we found, and actually it's Luca Maurice that was voting on those startups this year. So if you want to go dig cleaner energy trends, go in the app and meet Lucas from our team. Proton Technology is using the depleted oil wells to turn them into CO2 sequestration and H2 production facilities. And they do so at 50 cents a kilogram. And right now, hydrogen is still super expensive to produce. But they're using liquid oxygen in hydrocarbon reservoir to pick the H2 out of the reaction process. And they're already licensing their tech. So if you're a corporate having access to large geographical areas, they'd like to hear from you. Another trend we see rising also is that one solution won't fit all at all. So providing use case specific energy production and storage solution to this electrification of our energy landscape and mix is going to be instrumental. One cool startup that we spot is leveraging the urban geothermal storage for carbon-free energy solutions for cities. And right now, emissions of buildings in terms of energy consumption, like the aircon and the heating, is approximately 17% of our emissions every year. And they're able to reduce that figures by 90% and 17% of what is usually necessary in terms of normal energy. They do so with AI-enhanced technologies that will optimize the way thermal energy is produced, stored, and consumed all across the value chain. One other really cool opportunity space that we are looking at, and actually with BCG, because we're only giving you the teaser of those trends, reports will come early 2022, is to consider switching or narratives. For decades, industries were responsible for the GHG emissions, and we're wondering, is there a way to switch that narrative so industries become instrumental and core in this climate fight, but in a more, let's say, by design way? And looking at how industries can tackle such challenges, we're thinking about having them being more regenerative. So not only meeting the goals, but doing good. And it's massive economic opportunity. More than 2,000 billion by 2027, so roughly 8% CAGR growth will happen in the waste management market, driven by many industries: aerospace and defense, automobile, oil and gas, food, beverage, and so on. And a trend that was here already, but that is accelerating, is that we can actually have circular economy at scale. Mag Resources has found a way to recycle all the end-of-life magnets to produce ready to produce new magnets. They're based in Europe, and actually 1 million ton batteries will come to end of life around 2030. So it's now that we are building the, let's say, resilient infrastructures that we will need this next decade. They're doing so, leveraging hydrogen and finding a way to keep the structure of the magnets really clean to ease the production. And finally, another really interesting startup that is considering resources in another way is out of the blue. They're looking at the ocean as a solution to encapsulate CO2, storing it underground to reduce this acidification produced by the rise of CO2 in the ocean, while tapping an underexplored territory. Emmanuel Macron, back in France 2030, was actually claiming this next decade should be one in France about discovering more oceans and this ocean economy. The Europe is also turning towards oceans with the Green Deal. So I believe, and the team believes, that there will be massive opportunity in exploring those oceans. They do so with little invasiveness as possible, and it's a way that they found with new filtering technologies. Last opportunity space that we think could have a massive impact is mobilities and urban environments, because by 2050, the number of population we have to bring to urban environments is massive, and if those cities doesn't start to be climate change actors now, with the infrastructures being developed now already in place, then it's pretty sure that in 2030, 40, 50, the city won't be ready. It's actually 1% per year of change in the whole habitation and building renewal. So if you think about that, we clearly have to speed up. So one concept that's really, let's say, upcoming is these eco-conscious buildings. They do more than eco-friendly building in the way that there'll be intelligent stakeholders in this climate fight. And Brimstone is actually tackling the cement production. It's also a really actionable part of the greenhouse gas emission. They do so with a scalable process to make low-cost cementitious material and carbon-free cement. So with that work in the planetary health solution, I'm going to give the mic to Saurabh to give you some insights about the people health that deep tech can address.
Hello, everybody. Great to be here. As Chris mentioned, this year we tried to answer challenges posed by the corporates and posed by the world, by the deep tech. what I'm going to go through next are 3 opportunity spaces: sustainable and desirable food systems, inclusive and affordable health, and beyond classical computation. I'm Saurabh. I am from Tech to Health Tomorrow, deep tech expert. So COP26 made a lot of news, but there was something which stayed in news even more. Uh, I think most of you know what WFP director said, that 2% of Musk's wealth can solve world's hunger crisis. He also said it's a one-time crisis, a perfect storm, one-time phenomenon, conflicts, COVID, climate change. But is it a one-time phenomenon? Until billionaires like Musk and Bezos come to answer the world food crisis, we have to rely on science and technology. The 3 key challenges have been identified by UN: eradicating hunger, producing more food using fewer resources, feeding ourselves more sustainably. And I'll try to show you how we can do this in the next few slides. So one of the opportunity space is sustainable and desirable food systems. How we can achieve sustainability in a food system is also via achieving sustainability in supply chain. Do you know that 50% of these stored grains can be lost to moisture, fungus, and pests? And this is where Crower, a startup tackling the bottleneck in a food chain supply system, comes in. What they have is a supremely cool drone or robot, a granular robot, that can navigate its way through up and down in a big, big granular tank. Imagine a robot that can just go around, measure the moisture, measure the temperature, and and this leads to basically long-term storage of food, which will lead to reducing the losses of during the storage, basically. Sorry. One of the things that has been answering a lot of challenges in these days is biotech. And this is where biotech comes in again. From lab to fork, meaning things that we can eat but produced in lab. How many have you eaten cultured protein or cultured steak? Any of you have eaten a cultured steak? I mean, I really cannot see. OK, few of you. So that's great. How many of you like chocolates? Oh, come on. More hands, please. Yeah, OK, yeah. Do you know 1 bar of chocolate takes 18,000 liters of water to be produced? I know, chocolate is already a guilty pleasure. I'm going to make you feel more guilty for the next 2 minutes. 18,000 liters of water, enough to fill a backyard pool, basically. Most of the cocoa is grown in rainforest, which leads to deforestation, because these are the places where cocoa is grown and harvested. Basically, Cote d'Ivoire alone produces 1/3 of the total cocoa supply. But what if we produce cocoa beans by using plant cell culture, using biotechnology in a lab? A real sustainable ethical chocolate. And this is what exactly California Cultured has been doing. No child labor, no deforestation, no excessive use of water. Since I'm talking about biotechnology, yeah, cool. Since I'm talking about biotechnology, I have to talk about companies like Moderna, CureVac, and BioNTech. Moderna increased its revenue hundreds of fold in 1 year. Revenues of market capitalization of 5 mRNA companies went from 15 billion to 300 billion in just under an year. The fun part is this, that one company alone can raise economy of a developed country by 0.5% in 1 year. That's what biotech did in last 1.5 years. Which brings me to inclusive and affordable health. And the first trends are in regenerative medicine. Regenerative medicine basically refers to cellular therapies, gene therapies, or prosthetics. And I'm going to show you a supremely cool prosthetic femtech startup, HealShape. Before, I'll present you a few figures. 1.8 million women were diagnosed with breast cancer in 2018. The figure remains almost constant. 40% of them undergo mastectomy, removal of breast by surgery. 14% of these women go through breast reconstruction around the world, 20% only in France. What HealShape is doing is not just making a prosthetic that you can plant in, that can be implanted. What they are doing is making a bioimprintable ink. I'll let you see the video for a while. What they're making is a bioimprintable ink that makes this prosthetic. On this prosthetic, human tissues can grow back. So these prosthetics are implanted, and human tissues grow back in a way that the natural breast regains its shape, and there is no difference between the breast that grew after and before. Another, okay. If I do not talk about diagnostics, it does no justice to this time and this stage, basically, and this is what brings me to molecular diagnostics. How many of you went through PCR test or qPCR test in the last 1.5 years? There you go, there you go. How long does it take to do a PCR test? Anybody? 12 hours to 24 hours, basically. I have a startup here that can do the PCR test. What I mean by PCR test is amplification of DNA and mRNA in under 30 minutes without a machine. Imagine the point of care and remote care that you can achieve using this startup or the technology that they're using in 30 minutes. This is what Genome has been doing. What they have is a 1-point enzyme mixture that amplifies DNA and mRNA in 30 minutes, which can be measured in form of color, basically, colorimetric output. RT-PCR in a tube, anywhere, any distant location, and you have a diagnosis as efficient as PCR. Therapeutics, of course. I mean, how many of you like to be injected? How many of you like pain because of the injections? Anybody? Not a single hand. Damn it. Okay. This is what this next startup does. Instead of, I mean, a lot of us are vaccinated here. So instead of basically getting a jab, what they do is they make oral vaccines. They create bacteria that can carry a payload that you eat. It goes to your intestinal tract. It's absorbed. The antigen is presented to the body, and you have the immunity that you will get by a vaccine. Chain Biotech. They have a specific bacteria designed for it. They have, of course, the metabolic engineering, the precision engineering background to do this. If I don't talk about remote care, once again, I do not do justice to this time, which is what brings me to, or digitization of health tech, or AI in health tech. This is what brings me to digital patient twins. What I have here is a startup called iLof. What they do is, they do artificial intelligence stratification of patients for clinical trials. A lot of clinical trials fail, and one of the major reasons that a lot of drug candidates do not make it to the market is because clinical trials fail a lot. What if we have a controlled population for a particular clinical trial with a particular genetic makeup? This is what ILOF does. They stratify patients for clinical trials, making clinical trials more successful. The amount of capital that can be saved because of not doing non-successful clinical trials, I don't have the figures, so let's just say it's massive. So bringing personalized medicine to the market. Since I'm talking about artificial intelligence, I have to talk a little bit about how many of you watch Squid Game? Oh, come on. Oh yeah, few. Okay, great. How many of your computers crashed while watching a Squid Game? I don't think so. I mean, maybe, but if it crashed, it's because your computer was bad. It didn't crash because Netflix's streaming service was bad. One of the things Netflix did early in its days was to work on edge computing. Edge computing is basically a way to do computing at the user's end of the machinery. And this is what makes the streaming much better. HBO Max can crash. Other streaming services can crash. Netflix, 142 million people logged in to watch this series in a matter of 3 weeks, and it did not crash because of edge computing, which brings me to this. Any of you like to sleep while driving? Yeah. If you do, this is your answer. Sorry. Mindtronic AI. What they do is they have a mix of edge computing and AI, basically to make self-driving cars, autonomous L5, L4 vehicles. With this, I give the slides back to Chris for the last slide. Thank you.
Well, and it's only really a teaser of this year training report. So I'd invite you, if you're curious, to just pre-register. We'll release it in 2022 first trimester. What I wanted to say is that with those 6 opportunity space, there's massive growth. There's concrete solutions coming up. When we're talking with the corporates, helping us to shape the report this year, one key message was, yes, there's trends everywhere. But how do you get us to go to action? How do you get us to have our board members, investors, to agree on the technologies to pick and to develop, implement in our industries? I think one thing that was made really clear with the report that some of you will dive into this evening with the financing, the future event with BCG, so it's a report from earlier this year, is that it's becoming riskier not to invest in deep tech, not to have those solutions within your industries tomorrow, than exploring them. They're going fast, as Christian Germeyer or Daniel Metzler from this morning, Scale Europe panel community, were reminding the crowd. So there's no excuse anymore not to go and collaborate with those deep tech to implement those solutions, because they're getting ready. And what we see is that the time to market and, let's say, scaling capabilities of those deep tech have, over the years, really decreased. So it's shorter and shorter and shorter. So most of our trends are from 1 year to 5 years ready for industrialization. And I hope during those 2 days you enjoy the networking and the connection you'll do, because maybe we're not sure to have the chance to do that in a week or so with the next wave coming. But mostly what we see at Hello Tomorrow is the magic happening every year when corporates and deep tech collaborate together and go ahead, because really there's no way and no time not to be working hard together to solve those challenges. So with that, thank you again and enjoy the Hello Tomorrow Summit.